So from this video we'll start a new series of Laravel video which will be about examination system using Laravel. So Laravel is a framework of PHP which can be used to build, you could say, rich internet applications or web applications. Okay, so we'll be building the application end to end in Laravel, and we'll be using bits and pieces of JavaScript and jQuery, okay, for the front end part. Apart from that, we'll be using basic HTML and CSS. Okay, so let's get started. And here, first thing we need to do is we need to create a database. Okay, so firstly I'll call it exam DB. Okay, and the database has been created. Okay, and after that we'll need a few tables inside this. Okay, so first we would need a student table. Okay, so whosoever will be the students, so you could use the standard Laravel convention by naming the tables with a S, or you could say a plural form of the word. Okay, so that is the standard notation used in Laravel, but I prefer using the TBL, you could say, as a suffix to it. Whatever works for you, you could use. Okay, so for now we'll be using student TBL. Okay, and we'll not be using ORM because predominantly I don't prefer using ORM in most of my projects. Okay, so here we'll be using a student ID. Okay, and we'll have, for now we'll take an integer. Okay, and we'll keep its size at 10. Okay, let's int student ID, student name. Okay, and maybe is DOB or something. Okay, date of birth, and here you could take date, and is active. So here we would have a tiny int over here for checking whether that kit is active or not, and a few more columns we would need. Okay, created at. Okay, here we would have a timestamp for that. Timestamp and timestamp for created at, and there is another field called updated at. So these two fields would be needed for now, and let's just save all this. Yeah, just keep a text or a varchar over here. Okay, so whatever works for you. Okay, so varchar, and let's save this thing. Okay, here you might have noticed that I have kept all the columns as mandatory. Okay, so that's a design choice. Okay, so what you could do is you could set the values to default to null. If you want to allow nullables, you have to click this button and save to it. Okay, and now what I have done is I have created just the student data part. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to add a auto increment to this thing. Student ID should be auto incremented. Okay, and it's already a primary key, I guess. I have not, yeah, so the auto increment would be the primary key. Okay, so here the student ID, and apart from that it would have a user ID password as well, so we'll just add this thing. Okay, and after this thing we could have the same thing as a, you could say, a username and password, or we could have something like an email and a password. Okay, password you could have, you could say, a hashed one or a non-hashed one. Okay, but for our example we'll be using hash password, so both these fields I'm keeping as text. This one, email, I would keep as a varchar, sorry, and this one I would keep it as a text only, and here I would set the unique key. Okay, so I want this thing to be a unique key, email. And let's just save this thing, and two more fields are added here. email, password, student name, date of birth, is active, created at, updated at. Okay, so fair enough, we have done this part, and now to the exam part. Okay, so let's just create an exam table. So here this exam table would be kind of, you could say, a vocational exam sort of a examination system. So what we need to do is here we define a few data types. Okay, and here again we'll use int. Okay, and then like it's not mandatory to give the size here. Exam name, you could say, exam name, exam date, exam duration, or you can say, yeah, exam duration. Just a second. Date time here. Exam ID should be integer. Exam name can be a varchar of say 100 words. You could set the size according to you. Okay, and let's add two more fields to this. Is enabled. Okay, so this exam is enabled or not. Okay, so for now we will set a tiny into this thing, and we'll add just this created at and updated at, two columns that we'd add for this one. Okay, so one more column over here, created at, updated at. Okay, timestamp for both of these columns. Timestamp, and here I would add a special field called time. Okay, so time will be the duration. Okay, so for storing the duration, if the exam is for like 45 minutes, I have to give a 000, 2 zeros, 45, and 00 sort of a time. Okay, so that we'll see when we actually get into it. For now, just remember that we have taken a time data type for this thing. Okay, and pretty much we are done with the exam table. Okay, so here let's just make this thing as a auto incremented primary key. Okay, so you just set this thing as auto increment, it will automatically make it into a primary key. Okay, yeah, so that's done. So exam. Okay, and in exam we will have something called as questions, right? So questions and their answers. Okay, so but the thing is, if we use questions directly at every exam, we will have you could say a lot of redundant data. Okay, so what we'll do is rather have a question bank table. Okay, question bank table in which we'll have a global question ID. Okay, you could take a big int or something for this one. Okay, but for now I'm using only a simple integer over here, because let's keep the question at 255. Question option 1. So yeah, it's a MCQ based you could say examination, so I'll name it op1, and again I'll name this thing as 255 as well. Okay, so just putting in a few fields over here. op2, there is option 2, 255, again option 3, varchar 255, option 4, varchar 255. Okay, and right answer will again be varchar 255. Okay, and yeah, pretty much everything. Yeah, let's just set this thing to primary key, and we'll find our auto increment index as well, I guess. Okay, sorry, let me just scroll over here. Auto index. Okay, so let's see if we have got all the things properly. question, option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4, and right answer. Okay, so apart from that we will have subject ID. Okay, so it is related to which subject that you would want to know. Okay, so this would be a foreign key from subject table, and yeah, that's if you have any like questions metadata, you could have those fields like who has said this question or something like that. You could put that data over here, and after that we have pretty much done with this thing. So I'll just put an index over here. That will be an indexed column, and it will be easier to search this column. Here I will create a simple subject table. Okay, so database design is some of the important aspects before you actually get into making stuff. Okay, for now I'm not using much of a critical thought to it. You could say putting a lot of thought into creating the database, because I'm creating a generalized system. So like I'm not, you could say, building it for organization or something. So many things or features you might find are missing or like not done in the proper professional way, so that could be the case. Okay, so it's just a learning project. So I'll just, yeah, subject ID, subject name. Okay, we are good to go here. And to add a foreign key over here, question bank table, we'll just go to the relation view and select the subject ID from the subject table here, and cascade. Okay, just save this thing. Okay, and we are good to go, I guess. Yeah, so question bank is done. So now the actual exam questions table. Okay, exam questions. So here we would have the exam ID as the foreign key. Okay, but before that we'll have its own, you could say, primary key, exam QID, and we'll name it exam ID again, over here. And okay, so we are referencing this thing. Okay, and we will have this thing as a marks for this one. Okay, so like for how many marks this is. Okay, and for marks we don't need to put a range or something, but yeah, pretty much we'll add the same thing everywhere, so as to maintain this, you could say. So we are done with this table as well, exam quest table, sorry. And let's save this thing and see where all we could put the primary keys and foreign keys. So this thing, exam question ID, I would put it into a primary key for this one. Okay, so this one I would put an index over here and make it into a foreign key. So just head over to this table and make it into a foreign key. Okay, and the marks need not have any of the relation at this point. Okay, so for now we are done. Okay, so mapping of the students and the exam part we will see in some other video or the next video, but for now let's just begin with the project. Okay, so what I will do is I'll just create a project now. Composer, create project. Okay, Laravel /Laravel. Okay, and we'll call it Exam Sys. Okay, and for now I'm using the version 8.5 because I don't want to break the compatibility of my existing projects with PHP versions that have been, you could say, tossed up for an upgrade post PHP 8. So I've been using PHP 7.4 for across all my servers. So for now I'm not going to break the compatibility. For that purpose I'm using the version 8.5 of Laravel. You could use the advanced version 9 and 10 as well. Okay, so I'll just create the project now, exam sys. I'll just name it exam sys proj and enter. So this would create a project for me in Laravel. Okay, so it is fetching all the dependencies from the packages and stuff, and we are good to go once this thing completes. Yeah, so we'll be pretty much familiar with the Laravel structure. Okay, so I just hoping the code opens up fast. So yeah, we have created this thing. Okay, sorry, we created the whole directory. Okay, so ls and exam sys. Okay, and yeah, code. So yeah, we have started. So first thing we need to do is edit the env file, and here in the 8.5 env you would have this kind of bug that you need to resolve here. The db host is kept as mysql. You need to comment that part, and db host should be an ip address or a host name. Okay, so I'm using my local host, so it's 127.0.0.1. The database name that we are going to use, we should take that or grab that name from here. Okay, it's called exam sysdb. So I'll just replace with the default Laravel that's written. Okay, and I have not set any root password, so it is showing as empty. Okay, so it's a good practice to set a root password. Okay, so my followers, I would request you to please keep a root password if possible. uh, for learning purpose we need not have that thing. Okay, so yeah, let's just fire up the project and see what it shows, and whether we have successfully been able to fire it up or not. So it started up, and localhost 8000. Okay, so yeah, so the project has started up. So here, as we know, we'll add the routes in this thing. The first page that currently is showing into the welcome page, so we'll just create another page over here. We'll call it login page, login.blade.php. Then we'll have this thing, exam view page, view.blade.php. Okay, and after that we'll have this, you could say, exam listing. Okay, exam listing.blade.php. And yeah, pretty much done for now. Well, we could have a list of other, you could say, parts as well, and for now we'll just map the login page to here. This thing, just replace this thing with login. We'll not be using any fancy HTML over here, so we'll simply write. For now I'll not be using even this thing, what do you call it, the sections and the blade framework I will not be using in this one. So I'll just get started with the basic part. Okay, so I'll just name it head and title. So in Laravel, what you could do is you grab the title from this thing as well, the app env. Okay, so you could just add the title from over there. Okay, so in this env you have the title given in the app name. Okay, so you could use that as well over here. For now I'll be using simply like let's skip that part for now. So exam system. Okay, and this thing, body. Usually we use something called as layouts. We make a layouts file over here, and inside that we define all these parts. But for now I'm just doing it in a simple way. Okay, so we'll add the HTML parts later. Okay, login, exam login system, sorry, exam login system. And here we would have, you could say, our form. Okay, so like exam login system h1. So okay, so just have another br for extra spacing, and we will simply use a table tag for our login form over here. Okay, so this might serve like you could say a learning experience for those who are beginning into MVC. Okay, so I'm keeping things pretty much simple throughout the project so as to enable simplicity, or you could say uh, to ease the learners or the beginners. Okay, so I'm not putting much of the fancy UI stuff into it. That would make things easy for us. Okay, so user input type is equals to text, okay, and we'll name it given that ID, user ID, and name it into again user ID itself. Okay, and just replicate this block for now. Username, password, input type would be password again here. Previously it was text, and here it would be password. Let's just rename the variables as well. Let's call it passwd. Okay, again replicate this thing, and finally submit. Button would be submit and reset. For that we'll have these two buttons. Input type is equals to submit, input type is equals to reset. Okay, we'll set the values for this thing. Okay, so value is reset, and for this is value would be login. Okay, and here if you observe we have not taken a form tag, so let's just take a form tag over here, and let's get started. Okay, so here form tag, and yeah, so by default all the forms in HTML process the get request. Okay, so method is by default get, so if we explicitly specify, method should be post. Okay, and action would be the page, or the kind of, you could say, the URL where we need to send this data. Okay, so in this the action would be in the controller itself. So in a regular, you could say, web frameworks, we directly pass it onto some other file. Okay, like for PHP we pass it to some other PHP. In Java we pass it to some kind of a servlet or JSP page or sort of a thing. Okay, but here in Laravel, when it comes to any form of MVC, what we need to do is create a controller first, and inside the controller we need to define the methods. Okay, where the data would be sent. So for that purpose, what I'll do is I'll fire up another terminal over here, and I will simply create artisan make controller. So that's the function to make a controller, and I will call it you could say student controller. Okay, this is a student login that I've made for now, and I will name it student controller. So I'll pretty much put in all my methods in this kind of controller. Okay, so student controller, admin controller. So I'll limit my controllers to 2 of these controllers, but in enterprise level projects you might need to use multiple controllers, like n number of controllers, so as to work easily in teams and sort of a thing. Okay, so yeah, so I just created the controller. So the controller is in the app folder http controllers, and there's another thing called the middleware. Okay, so by default Laravel provides us a complete middleware suite, you could say, that provides us kind of a secure way to PHP, because back in the day PHP was not really that secure before you could say Laravel came in. Okay, so the security features are, you could say, available on the fly in this thing. Like it has like CSRF protections, It checks the tokens, authentication, encrypts the cookies as well. Okay, so these are all the various important functionalities that Laravel provides us on the fly. So like that makes it an amazing framework, I would say. Yeah. So yeah, for now we'll not be concerned about middlewares or this thing, but post the, you could say, login part, we would create our own middleware wherein we would check the user's token. Okay, so how that is done, that we'll see. Okay, first what I need to do is I just log this thing. Okay, public function login student. Okay, so here if you are having a Laravel background, you might think that why am I not using the default authentication, or you could say the auth facets that Laravel provides. But the purpose of this tutorial is to build things from scratch for beginners. So that is why we are opting for the classic approach. Okay, so like we are creating every single module of it. Okay, so that will probably help us in building the application in a easier way. And I'll just put this over here, and this request variable will be responsible for carrying the request data from this thing. Okay, so this login student, this is the function, so there's no binding between the function and the front end. So the only way to bind the function from the front end and the controller is through this routes. So there are multiple ways to put in the route. So the most popular two ways that I will tell you about, like not even popular, or you could say the most two ways that are used regularly are the web API and the web.php and the api.php. So api.php, the difference between the two is like api.php doesn't allow you to you could say interact with the cookies. So it does not have a client side interface, so it does not allow you to create cookies or sessions or interact in that way. So it's kind of headless in that manner. And web.php is basically having all the, you could say, the web features that we need. So the requests that are passed from the web.php have cookies, sessions, and all the fancy stuff that we need for the kind of full rendering of, or you could say, handling the client data. So that's pretty much the difference between the two. Otherwise they work like same. Okay, so here I'll just copy this thing route, or just type it anyway. So like here we have written, it is important what we have written. So here we have written post, so here also we need to write post. Okay, so post and the route that we write here. So if I wrote login check, okay, so I'm purposely using a different name than what I have used here. Okay, I have used here login student, but here I will be using login check. And what I will do is, first I need to create a square bracket for this one, and inside this I will call the controller first. So student controller class. Okay, and in this thing we'll call this function. Okay, so there's another concept called the name route and stuff, but we'll not be using it for now. In some other video we'll probably see that thing, or in this same video also, if at all I need, then I will show you that functionality. But for now we'll not be concerned about that part. Okay, so let's just take the login check part over here, and here we'll see. Okay, and I will simply do a print underscore r for this thing and dollar request. Okay, so this should show us everything it's got. Okay, and let's just, okay, so it will show you, it's not showing the submit button. Okay, let me check why. Input type, oh sorry, it's a spelling mistake or a typo. Okay, yeah, So test 1 2 3 4 5 6, and oh sorry, so we have not mapped here. Okay, so we call the student controller, but the Laravel program does not know where the student controller is. So there are namespaces in Laravel. So what we need to do is simply copy this namespace from the student controller. Okay, so just copy here and write use controllers. Okay, and backslash and add the name of this controller. Okay, so yeah, semicolon, sorry, and save. Now that error should actually go away. Resend. Okay, so it is showing a 419 page expired. So there, as I said earlier, there's a middleware that checks the CSRF token, which is this middleware verify CSRF token. So this middleware checks a token and the data associated with it. So for this token to work, we have to write @CSRF. Okay, and here we need not add anything else. Okay, so it's just a token that will be coming over here. Just refresh this page and test any random number and go. See here, so it would tell you about a whole lot of things. Okay, so it will tell you about multiple parameters. So if you could just check the user ID over here, that would be helpful. Control F and find the user ID over here. No, you cannot find over here for some reason. Yeah, let's just do user ID over here. This, yeah, test. Okay, user ID is test. I could just simply do this thing, echo the user ID and the password. Okay, so yeah, so we got both of these things. So in the next video we'll connect the login with our backend interface, okay, through the database and stuff. For now, to avoid making too much of a long video, I'll end the video over here. Okay, thank you.